Welcome to a seamless world. Well, we're not quite there yet, but here's an example of a seamless world. You may be familiar with this one. I don't know where I got this picture, but I thought the Jetsons actually ate pills for food in the future. I don't know if you, but it's nice to see that fried chicken and pizza are still up there. Although, I don't know if you noticed here, there's something called flying pizza. I can't imagine what that is, pizza with wings. So the question is, what will the Jetsons have that we don't? Because they're still, the Jetsons' future is our future. It's set in the year 2062, so we still have a little ways to go for that. So, what do they have? Do they have a flying car? Well, we have flying cars. If we really wanted to have flying cars, we could have flying cars. We could just, all we have to do is build them. I mean, the technology's there. What about robot maids? We have robot maids. Does anyone have a Scuba or Roomba here? That's a robot maid, right? What about a dead-end job? Yes, he had a dead-end job. He went to work 2 hours a week and pressed a button. Basically, all he did was go to work and press a button. You'd think that, the futurists of 1962 would have figured that at some point in the future, computers might take over most of those tasks, but they didn't. So what do they have that we don't have? None of that. But it's something that we can turn on at any moment if we wanted to. We just have to have the will to do it. But first, a little bit about me. That's me. Like the picture? My wife took it. She's very proud of it. So she said, you have to use it in your presentation. I'm a CTO at Symbio. It's a professional engineering services firm. We build products, everything from mobile apps, web apps, Internet of Things, wearable devices, all that good stuff. I'm an inventor. I have about 43 patents to my name, but I don't want to brag. I'm also a futurist. So one of the things I do for fun is actually look into the future, do scenario planning to figure out what's going to happen next. And whenever I tell people that, they said, well, tell me, what is going to happen next? So I say, well, it's going to be, obviously, a seamless world. Well, what is that, right? Well, it's kind of something like this. Skynet, right, from Terminator? You remember that? We're not quite there, but I don't think it's going to be that bad. So in the seamless world, you won't have to ask for anything. Things will just start happening for you. I mean, we're at a point today where we have all these devices telling us how to help us live our lives, right? We have wearables telling us you need to take more steps. We have thermostats telling us it's a little too cool, it's a little too cold, warm. We have all these things telling us what to do, giving us advice. Well, I think the next step after that is that these things will just start doing things for us. All we have to do is tell them to do it. There's actually a little bit of groundswell of people interested in doing something like this. I don't know if you guys read an article a little while back called The Rise of the Data Natives, and it was in Recode magazine. It was about, actually it's more of a website, and they were talking about a whole new generation of people who basically don't want their devices just to tell them what to do. They want their devices to actually do stuff for them. So instead of just going to Starbucks and paying for your drink, it'll actually tell you, here's a bunch of other people who are like you, and here's what they drink. Maybe you should try this too, right? Or get to a point where whenever you want things done for you, they'll automatically happen. So for example, you guys are probably familiar with this model. Car shows up, you get in, you ride, you get out, right? I mean, that's Uber. It's very, very close to a seamless world experience. So what would a seamless transportation be like? Well, it'll harvest your calendar, and it'll determine that you need to be at point B, and you're at point A, and it'll automatically dispatch a car for you. So Uber is very, very close to already being seamless. So what else can you do in this kind of world? Seamless commerce. You walk into a store, you pick up what you want to buy, and you walk out. Why do we need checkout lines? Why do we need to stop and fill up a shopping bag? Why do we need to go through security? Why do we need to do all of these things? All of these things are possible today. All the technology is out there. All we need to do is combine them in such a way so that that'll work. How about a seamless lunch? This was like the line earlier today going for coffee. I don't know if you guys were in that line going for coffee. It was like all the way around the floor. But how would this work? Well, basically, it's around lunchtime. It knows that you kind of go to the same places for lunch almost every day. So as you leave your desk, it detects that you're leaving your desk around lunchtime, and it figures, well, let's go ahead and submit that order to Panda Express. So by the time you get there, your food's ready and waiting for you. You walk in, your bag's sitting there, you pick it up, you walk out, everything's paid for in the background. All this technology is available. Turn this into this. It's all available today. We just have to put it together and make it happen. How about things like Internet of Things fridges, right? That can detect how much milk you have in your fridge. If your carton can tell your fridge how much milk there is in it, and then every carton can tell every fridge how much milk there is out there, then can't that feed back into the supply chain some way and figure out exactly how many cows we need? So, I mean, if you imagine big data and all the information that we can collect, we can do some amazing things to the supply chain and make it super efficient. How about electronic things, right? I mean, there's no reason why we can't have electronic things automatically delivered. I mean, if you guys use TiVo, TiVo had this feature called Suggestions, where it would fill up the empty space on your hard drive with stuff it thought you might like. Well, this is kind of what this is. And it's a bit like sort of like the goof up that happened. Well, I guess some people would call it a goof up, some people wouldn't, where the new U2 album got pushed to everybody's iPhones without their consent. I mean, that's not the way to do the seamless world, right? The way to do it is to actually go into your iTunes and go, is this guy a U2 fan? Would he like this album in his inbox or not? If he doesn't like it, then don't put it there, right? The question is, what's more creepy? Them looking in your inbox and telling you that this is what you'd like, or sending it to everybody? So this is not the way to do the seamless world, but they could have done it. I mean, why not, if you're a big fan of Devo, say, or some other band, and a new album comes out, why not automatically give them that album, and then if they don't like it, they can give it back after 24 hours or something like that. It's an electronic. I mean, there's no reason why it can't be sent back. There's no cost there. I think you see where this is going. Stuff will start happening automatically. And the way we need to do that is to build rules for our life. How are these things going to occur? Well, the building blocks are already out there. We're talking about them some today, and there's other building blocks that are already there as well. Number one, three things. First one is big data. Big data needs to know everything about you. Your calendar, history, email appointments, tweets, Facebook updates, everything. Sort of a deep, deep dive into your entire life and everybody you know and everything you do. And by knowing all this, it can start making predictions about where you're going to be, what you need to do, what's going to happen. And it needs to know all of this information in order to make these predictions. Now, a lot of people will say, well, you know, that's a big privacy problem, right? But do you remember a number of years ago when Gmail came out with their running ads against your Gmail, and everybody was complaining, oh, you know, they're scanning our mail, you know, no privacy, no privacy. But that went away real quick, right? Because you got some utility out of it. You thought Gmail was great, everyone started using Gmail, now everyone uses Gmail. I mean, who has a Yahoo account? Who has a AOL account? Nobody. But Google is still putting up ads against your inbox, right? So those privacy issues are going to start going away because we're going to see a huge upside in the amount of services that we're going to be able to get. That's what I already said. With enough data, we can predict pretty much everything. And if you think about it, it's kind of like the if you have enough data, almost anything is possible. Because if you can get rid of almost all uncertainty and make super amazing predictions, almost magical predictions. The next thing that needs to come together is the Internet of Things. Now, big data is great, but you can't get that super, super detailed, refined data that you can with somebody wearing a wearable device where I detect, okay, I've walked from this side of the room to that side of the room, or I'm in this spot and that spot, or I'm looking here, I'm looking there. Those specific things can only be collected by Internet of Things devices or wearable devices. And those things are going to enrich the big data set for us to be able to make those amazing predictions. And I already talked about that as well. It knows where you are, it knows what you're doing, it knows where you're going, it knows what you're going to do next. So why can't it make those predictions for you? And then why can't it suggest to you, this is what you need to do? Well, the other day I was going to pick up my son from school, and I was going to be 5 minutes late. And I wanted to send him a text saying, I'm going to be late. Well, why can't my app automatically detect that I'm going to go pick him up. It already knows that I'm picking him up because it's in my calendar. It says pick up Jason at school at this time. It knows based on the traffic and where I'm going and how fast I'm going that I'm going to be late. So why doesn't it doesn't even ask me, do you want to send Jason a text to tell him you're going to be late? I mean, wouldn't it be great if it automatically just sent a text? Yes?
Google now does that if you've got commute sharing on.
You can? Okay, see, so they're already moving in that direction. Now, I'd love to be able to automatically send a text. I mean, if you think about it, all day long, we do all these little tiny things. We spend our whole day doing these little things, spending little bits of time on things that we could easily automate, and we should be able to using the seamless world. Once we can predict everything we know, we can predict all, not with 100% accuracy what you're going to do, but close enough to make it seem really magical. And because people are creatures of habit, and habits are hard to break, then a lot of those things are going to be amazing to people. And the last thing is automation. Now, the thing I was telling you about earlier was, it'll say to you, it could even say to me, do you want me to send a text to Jason telling him I'm going to be late, right? Well, why can't I just say, every time this happens, do that? So why doesn't it ask me? Every time it asks me to do something, it'll just give me the criteria. It says, every time you want me to do this, every time you want to do Y, do you want to do Y, every time X happens. And then that'll create sort of like a rules for our life. Kind of like if this, then that style. And then this will just be created, a nice little list will be created over time as we live our life and we do our thing. And then we can always go back in afterwards and say, you know what, maybe I won't do this, maybe I won't do that. I can go in and change my rules of life. But things will start happening automatically for us, and we don't really need to involve ourselves in it unless it does something wrong. Then we can tell it to do something different. That's the world of tomorrow. Jetsons. No flying car, though. Now, when I suggested this to some friends of mine, they said, oh, this is great, we'll let the internet and automation do all these small things, then we can think the big thoughts, right? And somebody said to me, well, I posted this on Facebook, this as a blog post, right? And they said to me, well, you know what, this is great, but you know what might happen? This, right? We're going to be so coddled that we're going to become, let's say, a little chunky, right? And I thought, well, you know what, that doesn't necessarily need to be the case, because what about seamless fitness, right? I mean, the problem with fitness is not actually the wearable, and for some reason I'm not wearing my Fitbit today because I needed to charge it. It's not the wearable device, but it's the ecosystem around the wearable device. If you connect the wearable devices into the seamless world and then actually say to the world, I'm trying to lose weight, then it'll do all sorts of things to help you lose weight, but integrate it right into your life. So you don't have to spend, 4 hours a day at the gym. It's the ecosystem around the wearable. So let's say one day the world detects that you want to lose weight because either you tell it or you're eating less and walking more. So what it'll do is it'll do all sorts of things to make sure you get your exercise in. So the first thing it'll do is it'll tell your GPS to park 20 minutes away from your appointment and walk the rest of the way, right? Or maybe elevator doors won't open when you walk into the building because it knows you have to take the flight of stairs, and it knows that you're going to be early enough for your appointment to take the flight of stairs, so you don't have to worry about that. And this one I kind of find really cool, because in Google Glass version 2, as you're walking along the street, it knows what you're allowed to eat. And it'll put little icons in front of the restaurants to say, can't go in there, you can go in there, can't go in there, you can go in there, can't go in there, you can go in there, right? And then when you're actually in the restaurant, and you sit down and you're looking at the menu, temptation is blocked, right? Okay, I can only have the turkey breast and the grilled chicken, and you can't see anything else because it's blocked from your view. Of course, we can't really do anything about the smell of the roast beef wafting through the kitchen, but it'll be very similar. And then, so you think, well, what about exercise? Well, it'll do the same thing. It'll, make sure it'll book time. It sends personal trainers to your door with all the equipment that you need at the exact right moment that you need it. All that stuff can happen for you in this seamless world. So, as I said, welcome to the world of tomorrow. Thanks. Any questions?
Yeah, why not make two exercises when you can just connect some electrodes to your body and compare the control?
Does that actually work? Because if there are electrodes, then I would definitely want to take that. I would totally do that. If you could do that, I would totally do that. I would absolutely do that. But all of this stuff that I talked about today, we can absolutely do. We just haven't put the pieces together. I mean, some of the Bluetooth stuff is a little too expensive to work on everything, but we're very, very close to having this reality today. Yes, sir.
Do you have any concerns about the omniscient bigger data?
I think what's going to happen is that I do have some concerns, and a lot of people do have concerns, but I think those concerns are going to go away because the upside that you're going to get from the services that you're going to get are so good that people are just going to say, you know what, this saved my life. And you can imagine guys who set up a rule to, automatically buy flowers for their wife before their anniversary or something like that, or chocolates, or even mix it up or whatever. I mean, if you think about it, there's so many things that could be relegated to that sort of automation that we're not doing now, that it would just enrich people's lives so much that they would be happy to give it up.
It could lead to much more depression than we have right now.
You think so?
Because if you remove the randomicity and accidents from people's lives, then everything is like calculated, and the flowers are bought for every anniversary. I mean, it's just horrible. It's depressing.
But you can always insert randomization into it.
There is an app actually that would do something like that for you. You would install it and it would send messages at
Yep.
like intervals.
Yeah, I've heard about that app.
And you wouldn't even necessarily be aware that, it was doing that.
Exactly.
I guess it wouldn't do it if you were like in proximity or something like that.
Yep.
But it was the type of thing where you wouldn't necessarily want to tell the other person that
Mhm.
that was what was happening. So
Yeah.
you're kind of like optimizing a relationship without actually engaging.
Yeah.
Optimizing.
Yeah.
Why would you date that?
But if you think about it, with the automation, it wouldn't be something like I would send flowers every year. It would be like, okay, well, I know what she likes, I know what she's into, and I know what she's interested in, and it would tell me that, or even just send it automatically. So like, this week she wants these shoes, the next week she wants these diamonds or whatever. Just like, put it into the queue, right?
Yeah, you should say like, hey, your wife might need a hug.
Yeah, exactly.
Would you like me to send one?
That's
So what are your thoughts about how that data gets in the system? Because right now, I mean, if we were going to do that, it means my calendar has to be up to date.
Yep.
I have to be on a schedule, I have to.
Yep.
But if we're talking about a much more sort of fluid where, that your wife might like something different this year.
Mhm.
What are your thoughts about
Well-
how that gets in the system?
Well, that's where, first of all, it's got to be, there's a platform that has to collect all this. And that's where, when you're talking about updating your calendar, you are going to update your calendar as best you can, but things will happen, and you won't be able to update your calendar, right? But you have your phone on you at all times, and your phone can track where you're going, what you're doing, where you are, plus there'll be Internet of Things devices and wearables that are also tracking all the rest of it. So if it knows you're going to be late for your appointment, it will recalculate your calendar. If it knows that, let's say you walk into Best Buy and you keep picking up this same camera and looking at it and putting it down and putting it down and looking at it. Right, you know how when you're on Amazon, if you're looking at the same thing every now and then you get an email saying, hey, you looked at this before, maybe you want to buy it now, right? But that's the same concept, just translated into the real world. So this data from all these devices will be collected into the sort of the cloud of big data, and then that's where the predictions will get really, really accurate. So you will maintain your calendar as much as you can, but then these devices and wearables will sort of fill in the blanks that are not there.
It seems like you maintaining your own calendar is sort of like George just pushing the button.
Yeah.
It's sort of like right now our concept of what it means to maintain a schedule, we maintain our own. But then, I don't know, it seems like in this view, everything would sort of be, like you wouldn't have been filling in your own appointments. They're all sort of populating and.
Well, if you think about it, you wouldn't really need to, because it's almost like Nest, right? I mean, with the way Nest works is that you set the thermometer up and down, and it learns what you do. So let's say you go to work, and then every week it knows, okay, at 10 o'clock he's in this room, at 11 o'clock he's in that room meeting with this person, with these people. After about a week or so, our devices and the Internet of Things will have learned our schedule, right? So we wouldn't have to fill out our schedule. It would know, I'm in this room with this person, I'm in this room with this person, I'm at this office with that person. So it'd be able to figure out what our weekly calendar is if we do those kind of regular meetings without us even having to fill it out. It'll do it. It'll fill those out automatically for us. We wouldn't have to. We would just have to go in afterwards and go, this needs to change. But all this stuff is being recorded, so it can easily fill in our calendars.
Would you at some point imagine there being some strong counter movement against this?
Oh yeah, I can totally see that.
How would you imagine that would manifest itself, and when do you think that would happen? Like what would sort of be the tipping point?
I think if it started making a lot of mistakes, I think that's where people would sort of go up against it and have problems with it. But
You're feeling down. Do you want some cocaine?
well, when we actually have mood rings, right? Because we'll probably eventually have actual mood rings that will report our mood back to the cloud, so they'll know, oh, are you happy or whatever. I mean, I can see that happening at some point, where imagine if it detects that you're always in a sour mood after you talk to your brother, right? So your brother calls, your phone doesn't ring, right? Because it knows this guy is going to put you in a sour mood. Let's send him a voicemail, right? It just does it for you. See, that's what I'm saying, is that it's going to become so useful that people are just going to say, you know what, I'm sucked into this. It's fantastic. I can't live without it. It's kind of like we are with our cell phones now. I mean, it's hard for us to take our smartphones and just leave them behind, right? Because they're so useful. They're our backup brains. It's like we've taken our own minds and expanded them to the size of the universe. And can you imagine if it started all of a sudden doing all these things for us? They're like, wow, this is great. I don't have to do that anymore. I don't have to do that anymore. All these little things that you've done over the course of the day are gone. You don't have to think about them anymore. They just happen. Yes?
So there's the concerns about omniscient data. I mean, that doesn't really concern me as much. I mean, so when I was thinking about, you're talking about the Google scraping your email for ads.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of the comforting things about that is like, oh, it's just a machine. It's like, it's not some person who you're going to meet someday who's reading through your emails.
Yeah.
And so then, okay, now we've got this big, brain that's
It's still a machine doing all these things.
Yeah, a big machine. And so,
Yeah.
But it seems like one of the concerns would be, if it is reaching into, like, it is deep into our lives, and like all this data is the crux of what's really making it work, then, one way I think could conceivably go is, when I first joined the system, I either signed in with my Apple ID or my Google or my Gmail account, and then from then on, I belong to Google or I belong to Apple.
Right.
And so it seems like, one of the concerns for me isn't so much that my data's out there and something does it, it's that, I can't, that now I'm locked in to, whoever has my data essentially is holding me hostage.
See, you just came up with a fantastic business idea, right? Why not create sort of like your own personal data store that then these guys can subscribe to? So you own their data and you control your data and you're dumping all this stuff into your personal data store, and then let Apple and Google and Amazon and whoever subscribe to it so they get access to your data, and maybe they can even pay you for it, right?
I guess another big concern is of course security. I mean, you get in some car and you think you're going to pick up your son or so, but then you get out of the car and you're held on by gunpoint, right?
Yeah, well, there's already cases of people hacking cars, right? I mean, cars are being hacked and driven to the wrong places and turned off and stuff like that. So there is a huge security piece to it. Yeah, there's that has to be there as well, for sure.
Like we can't resist making these products.
No.
Like we're all of us here, we're like, we can't, we'll think about that, but the onslaught of the future is coming, and we're making.
Yeah, this is inevitable. See, that's what's so cool about this. It's inevitable. The question is, how quickly will it get here? Not, is it going to happen, right?
One of the concerns that I really have is like these technologies. If you look at what we're doing here in this building, we're all talking about embedded hardware, and we're talking about things that are tethered to smartphones. And what we're kind of creating is a world for us that we can afford.
Yeah.
Because we can. But there are a lot of people out there who don't have access to the technology, and I just feel like
But that technology will eventually get to that point. And in some cases, it'll actually leapfrog some of the technology that's there. It's kind of like what happened with cell phones in Africa and places like that, where they didn't go through the landline phase. They just went straight to the cell phone phase. So it might be the same way here. We might go straight, we might go straight to the IoT phase as opposed to jumping through some smartphone phase.
This is already happening with medicine, for example. There are some companies that deliver to clinics, like in very remote areas of the world, by drones when they need them, right? So this is already getting sort of automated. Like you don't need roads anymore. You don't need infrastructure.
Yeah.
You just need, some sort of communication, and then a drone flying there.
Well, well, here's another example.
Yeah, it just comes there.
So you guys have heard the Will.i.am announcement earlier this week? Well, he announced sort of like a standalone wearable bangle, and that's what I always thought. I thought the iWatch would be way cooler because it would be standalone, but it's not. It's tethered to your iPhone, right? But this is standalone wearable bangle that's got all the electronics on it. I mean, is there any reason why we can't take something like that, load it up with all sorts of amazing stuff, and then give it to people in third world countries or whatever, and then have them leap over the smartphone by having a wearable bangle that has all that functionality, and then maybe once it gets into proximity of internet, it'll download updates, and then when you leave, everything's on here so that you can use it while you're away. I mean, people are already thinking about leaping over our sort of smartphone-centric world into new devices that then can be given to other places that aren't as wired as we are.
Opportunities for virtualizing personal property. Using the latent capabilities of stuff to allow it to be shared around. And,
Yeah.
Raising everybody's prosperity up together.
Yeah.
Things like that. So,
Exactly.
Like the bike sharing thing here.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty awesome.
Well, yeah, I mean, the sharing economy easily can be transplanted anywhere. Any other questions? Thanks a lot, everybody.